Si se calla el cantor, calla la vida, porque la vida misma es todo un canto. Fuerte el canto seduce sobre las mareas, inundando siempre los pesares. Si se calla el cantor, muere de pronto todas las libertades de la vida. No saben los cantores de agachada, no callarán jamás de frente al crimen. We can never stop singing because he will be the same as being dead. We need to express our feelings, our desires, our fears. Talk to the world, all those injustices that oppress us. Never be quiet. You are an activist. Yo tengo tantos hermanos que no los puedo contar. En la pampa, la montaña, en la tierra llena caliente. Por eso de la amistad, con un lloro apasionado, con un rezo para rezar. Y así seguimos andando, curtidos de soledad. Y así seguimos andando, buscando y luchando por la libertad. Yo tengo tantos hermanos que no los puedo contar. Y una hermana muy hermosa que se llama libertad. And I have a beautiful sister, I have many brothers, but one beautiful sister, her name is freedom.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Seth. I'm the Executive Director of Activist San Diego. And this is the launch of our first in-person hybrid meeting of the year. So we're working it out. Any of the bugs that you may seem any glitches, please bear with us. We're just working this out as we come to open back up into the real community sense of community engagement. So thank you for being here. As I saw you guys pull up into the parking lot, I've got so much more relief. At first, it was just a few of us here, and I was like, wow, all of our audience is still going to be online. But then people started flowing in here. It really lifted my heart. So thank you guys for coming in. I'd like to start off with the land acknowledgement. We are standing and sitting on Kumeyaay lands, unceded territory of our indigenous brothers and sisters. But there are people also online who are standing on Payakumbucham land, which is the other part of San Diego County. And you may know these tribes as Luiseños, but Luiseño is not their name. Their name is Payakumbucham. So we're standing on this unceded territory, and we need to act like we're visitors at someone's home. When it comes to environmental justice, when it comes to cleanliness and hygiene, and taking care of our general microenvironment, the larger environment is something that is impacted by what we do here. So it's very important that we follow the traditions of the original people of this and show respect to those people and their land. And I say that as a stolen man on a stolen land. Now, I'd like to go into some upcoming events that Activist San Diego participates in and you might need to be aware of. First, on Saturday, May 20th at 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., there's going to be a ceremonial ribbon cutting for the KNSJ radio, the new station, KNSJ. KNSJ radio is the people's radio station. You pay a lot of music that you can relate to, revolutionary music, music that moves the people, and we also have guests on who talk about issues that affect the people. So please contact us to get your voice on the radio to the people. KNSJ is the place to come and join us. On Tuesday, May 23rd at 12 p.m., the city council plans to, unfortunately, criminalize the homeless. We need people to stand up and speak out against any types of legislation that makes homelessness a crime. We have a pandemic of homelessness here in San Diego County. That pandemic comes with disease. It comes with environmental injustice and impact. It comes with hygiene impact. And it's just an inhumane process that we have to deal with such a crisis in San Diego County. And we have our legislators that are going to make an inhumane decision. We need to make sure that our voices are heard and speak up for those whose voices are not heard. So we need all of you in that fight. We're also having a march and a rally that we're having starting at the county building. And Colleen will tell you more. At the city hall, sorry. At the city hall, we're going to march around that building and standing up for homelessness, people who are affected and impacted by homelessness in San Diego County. So, yes.
The 23rd, that's a city, not a county issue. I mean, it's at the city hall, right? That's so, but even though you're not a city resident, you can still participate.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Right. I am not a city resident. I live in the city of Escondido. Okay. But yeah, I go and I represent Chula Vista, and I represent in Coronado, and I represent in La Jolla, and I represent everywhere. So yes, please come down. Carlsbad, that's right. That's right. So Oceanside, so please, no matter where you live, come out because it's a humane issue of humanity. And you are part of that family, and so are all of us. So make sure that you're participating there. And then on Monday, June 19th is Juneteenth. The official Juneteenth holiday is Monday, June 19th. And there will be several Juneteenth events throughout the weekend. Usually people choose the Saturday of the weekend of Juneteenth. So on that Saturday, there are going to be a lot of events in San Diego County. The Cooper family Juneteenth event always goes annually every year, and that's going to happen in San Diego, but also in North County. The North County NAACP will have an event there, which we have every year in North County. The North County chapter of NAACP and El Centro is also having one in having another Juneteenth. Actually, I have to be in all three of them. So I will be moving and grooving, and I'll make the last one I go to the one in El Centro, do the others early to get up to El Centro, spend the rest of my time there. So Monday, July 17th, we will have a presentation here. Our next community meeting will be on housing or the lack thereof, the situation, the posture San Diego has on the housing crisis. And we have a guest speaker that's going to be here that's really connected to the housing, along with Colleen and many of our other activists. This activist, he is going to speak to us on that day. So please come back to us again so you can hear Ellis Rose speak on this issue.
Clarify Juneteenth, Monday we have our ASD meeting.
Yes, in Juneteenth, also on Juneteenth that Monday, we will have our Juneteenth acknowledgement here for Activist San Diego, and I will be giving a presentation and a history and a background on Juneteenth. what it is and what it means to people of African American descent and what it means to America in general, because Black history is American history. So we're going to get into that. Lastly, I'll say that we're doing an anniversary gala for KNSJ, but that information is to be determined. We'll get that information to you. So there's going to be a lot of things for KNSJ. July 15th. July 15th. Yes, it will be the 10th anniversary is what I'm about to say. Sorry if I say July 10th. It's going to be our 10th anniversary, and we want everybody to show up and be a part of that gala, but more information to come, so please stay tuned. Now, I'm going to introduce the main topic of today to this community gathering. We're going to talk about surveillance, and we have some experts here to tell us about surveillance in general, but particularly surveillance in San Diego County. And you may wonder, with these smart streetlights, what does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with us? Maybe the smart streetlights are here to protect us all from violence, as they claim it does. So, what does that have to do with us? Well, you're going to learn here today what it has to do with you and your rights. Your rights could be violated, and you have no recourse if you don't stay the course. Your rights may be violated, and you have no idea what's going on. Sold out of the city, sold out of the state. Nobody has the right to know how often you go to mental health. Nobody has the right to know how often you go to the grocery store. You're not a criminal, so why should you be criminalized with surveillance? So we're going to have a great talk about that. We have our brother Seth that is here, and he's going to be our guest speaker, and Ike as well, helping him out. And these two are going to be, and Lilly. Lilly is also going to be discussing this issue for us, and they're going to bring us the down and dirty, what does this mean to us? And they're going to, I'm sure, open it up for questions and answers. So with that, I'll turn it over to Francis, and Francis will take us through this discussion.
Awesome. Francis will frame the shot, and then Francis will kick it off. Okay. Awesome. Thank you all. Multitasking, it's real.
Production team.
I know, right? Yeah. And crap services.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really amazing and special to be here in my first in-person Activist San Diego monthly community summit. I joined Activist San Diego I arrived in San Diego basically right when the pandemic hit. And I asked one of my organizing colleagues who I needed to meet in San Diego, and he said, find Martin Eder. And I found Martin and much, much more in this amazing organization. So it's been great to find a organizing home where we can actually make an impact and do work on many, many, many issues in a meaningful way. And while Activist San Diego, is also clear what we are not. We are an organization that works with other organizations and doesn't want to replace anybody, but wants to work in tandem with and really help create that network of social justice across San Diego, and to support. We have various resources that we're happy to share. We will be doing a website revamp and making it very clear what things we have to offer, like our sound system and other kinds of support. So stay tuned. We are an all volunteer run organization, and so it's doing a lot on a little. So we welcome you. We encourage everyone to become a member, a contributing member of Activist San Diego. Literally is what funds all of the organizing that we do, the snacks, and keeping the radio station we have got going, and so much more. We want to grow to an organization that we can actually have a paid staff. Brother Yusuf Miller is one of the hardest working folks in social justice. And our vision is to be able to employ him as our executive director and not just have him be donating all his time and energy, and all the others that do, including myself and Martin, who carries a lot of weight, other volunteers. So, and you're all invited to contact us and find out how you can get more involved, producing upcoming monthly meetings, that kind of thing. And you get to do cool stuff like this. So on that note, it's my honor to introduce two organizing colleagues, and I feel like just fast friends. I've got to know these two in the community over the last year. And so to my right, we have Lilly Irani.
I'm just being goofy.
She's a professor, so she probably is not used to like applause so much, or do you? More like
When the
critique.
class is over.
Every class, that students just burst out in applause. I would like to be in your class. That'd be cool. She's an associate professor of communication and science studies at the University of California, San Diego, where she's the faculty director of the new UC San Diego Labor Center. Applause, applause. She organizes with the Tech Workers Coalition of San Diego and is on the steering committee of the Trust Coalition, which is the Activist San Diego is a member of. It's called the Transparent and Responsible Use of Surveillance Technology, one of the coolest acronyms organization names there ever was, right?
It's Genevieve, yeah. It's Genevieve.
Credit,
Jones
okay.
Wright credit, yeah.
Nice. Lilly comes to this work as an Iranian American from Muslim communities. And to her right, we have Seth Hall. He's a career technologist and co-founder of San Diego Privacy. Since 2019, he's been helping the Trust Coalition defend San Diego's communities from the creeping harms of surveillance technology. So we are deeply grateful that these two very, very busy folks with lots of wisdom are here to share with us and hear from us, because I think as organizers do the work, knowing it's a two-way conversation, right?
Yeah.
So
We're just here to like catch you up on some stuff. And here.
yeah, and so let's just kick off. We're gonna start with Lilly and Seth, and we're also we have Ike with us, who is one of the members of the Private Advisory Board. So
Chair.
Chair.
Thank you for your service. Does
It's
not look
so-
easy.
And
Yeah.
so actually, let's wait, I'm gonna introduce. I don't have a bio of Ike. So Ike, maybe you could give us your bio and also share, since you're gonna have to leave sort of soon, maybe share what the Privacy Advisory Board is and who you are.
So, in 2019, the Trust Coalition formed, and one of the dreams that we had was that the city of San Diego and the people of San Diego would never again be utterly and completely fleeced like they were with the original streetlight surveillance system, which was proposed by the city's sustainability department as like a climate action thing, and then quickly just became a 100% mass surveillance tool for the police. It was never used for any other purpose. And one of the things that we just desired for the coalition, for the entire community, was that experts like people in this room and people outside of this room who live in San Diego and who are affected by these issues would be able to come together and take a more critical look at these proposals before they are ever passed again. And that took a lot of energy among activists, especially like people in this room. But I'm really pleased and proud to say that today we do have that board. We have the Privacy Advisory Board. It's made up of 8 members, eight community members right now. It's supposed to have 9 sometime soon maybe. And those 8 community members are experts in areas of law, policy, accounting, and just in general community experts who are bringing forth their own vision of how surveillance, affects them and their communities.
Seth, who appoints them?
The mayor appoints them, the council confirms them. And so I'm really proud to introduce Ike because the mayor appointed him as a community expert. And the board voted to make Ike the board chair. And for those of you who don't know, the board chairs of these, the chairs of these boards ultimately have a lot of important responsibilities. They have to make a lot of decisions and keep the board moving and progressing, right? But Ike is a community-minded guy who I know believes family and personal privacy. So I really think that the community happens to be in really good shape, at least for now, with Ike leading this board. And there's a bunch of other excellent board members on this board as well. So that's a quick introduction. And Ike, if you want to tell people a little bit more about your background, I'd love that. And I'd love to give you a prompt for something maybe that would be informative for guests. Kind of help you explore a little bit.
Well, sure. Well, thank you so much for the glowing introduction. And also thank you, Yusuf, and everybody here with Activist San Diego to have me here in this beautiful place. I'm absolutely honored and humbled to be under this roof. So as Seth mentioned, my name is Ike Anyanetu. I am the chair of the Privacy Advisory Board, the newly established in the past year. We are meeting regularly now. And as Seth mentioned, one of the big motivations for the creation of the board is to prevent these unilateral sweeping decisions from above to be laid out to San Diegans without any kind of input, any kind of community engagement, any kind of invitation to the public to actually keep the city, the mayor, the police in check as to if what is being communicated is actually happening. So, and let me tell you about how that's actually happening. 2016, as we all know, was the first attempt at the smart street lights that was, I believe, a $30 million initiative that the city is still, I believe, paying for, that was rolled out. It was pitched under the guise of efficient streetlights, improving the cost of utilities for the city. Kind of in fine print is all this other stuff came with, including this surveillance technology that the police noted and quickly pursued. And it took years for the city to come back and say, okay, we're getting actually a lot of feedback that this is not what was advertised. Let's pull the plug. And so that's great in one sense, but the technology is still out there. And I'm not sure if it being turned off means it's actually safe because it's still data sitting there. So, and the fact that this was rolled out without a ton of input from San Diegans is not a good tone to set for the city and for the community. So one of the things that's most important is for the community and the public to actually have a seat at the table. And one of the things that the Privacy Advisory Board is interested in is ensuring that we do have this strong line of community volunteer, all volunteers by the way, from wide sweeping areas, from law, policy, engineering. I myself am a community activist who also is a technologist, so I do have a bit of understanding of some of the things that aren't said about these technologies that are coming out. And essentially what's most important here is that the community knows that it's not something that is just kind of a rubber stamping group. It's not something to placate the community. This is something for the community to have real involvement, to have real debate. We're actually getting a lot of pressure from the city and from the police to get a lot of the proposals through. Thankfully, Trust San Diego, in part, got the surveillance ordinance established such that any technology that is a surveillance technology has to go through the board. So think about that. Anything that surveils to San Diegans has to go through the board, and we can either approve, deny, we can modify the proposal going through, and we do this after a lot of community involvement. So we're established, we're up and running. The very first thing that was put through is the smart streetlights proposal. So we do have about another month or so before we have to give an official recommendation, but we're making sure we get all the voices in first. So we do have a few upcoming events. We're going to make sure that related groups get that information out there and we get that confirmed. We will have, I believe, 3 listening events along with our next advisory board meeting on the 31st. And you can probably imagine that it's going to be relatively well attended and well spoken for. So please, if you're not aware, please know that there is a way to engage with the city, with the police, and with your fellow people in the community.
You needed no prompt. That was awesome. Thank you for giving us again. I know that we only have, actually for a little bit longer, he got started a little late. He has a young family that he has to take care of. But I thought that maybe we could use the next few minutes, to let people, this is the chair of the board. If you want to know something about this board, this is your chance to find out the answers to your questions, so maybe in case we have a few little questions, maybe.
And I'll take a stab.
Okay,
What's it?
on this observation, as we know, we've been up to history about China, it is an observation state, a surveillance state, cameras everywhere. And they did a really good PBS about when they detain you, they get your voice, they get your eyes, they get your, everything is that you're a file digitally. So when you're out there, they can spot you on the camera or hear your voice on the phone, etc. That's clear that, okay, correct?
That's certainly, those are mass surveillance systems. There's nothing to stop that from happening here, except basically the people in this room.
Right.
And it's happening.
Okay, that brings up the next. Really, I'm really uncomfortable because go to obviously the airport is there, and we go crossing into. Who here has gone into the United States walking as a pedestrian? You walk in from Mexico as a pedestrian. Okay, so when you have a hat, you have to take it off. You have to go like this, right? To me, that basically fundamentally is a violation of my civil rights. And that itself is so innocent, but yet it is very imposing. So it's not that you're intimidated, but it's just the attitude of the officers, little by little, getting this attitude of saying, take off your hat, take off your glasses, and pose for less than a minute, because sometimes they have to adjust it. That's what's getting to me. That I feel so powerless as an individual walking into the United States, and then I witness it. I see that other people being harassed because they're not turning, or within the Spanish or the communication, and it gets frustrating for them. But it's a behavior of having to go to the screening because the innocence of my day growing up and saying, American citizen, nothing declared. They look at me, you check me as a human being because I'm scanned by a human being. And then I go, there's no passport. Those days are over.
I'd love to speak to that. And that's a really good point. There absolutely is going to be a chilling effect any time a surveillance technology is rolled out. And that is going to dissuade the behavior that they explicitly say, but there of course will be a spectrum of behaviors that are not spoken about that they're also trying to discourage. So I just want to make a point there that when talking about surveillance technology, it's important to talk about what is being discussed, but it's also important to talk about what's not being discussed. And with the smart streetlights, if you actually read the impact report and the use policy that the police deposit, which is all available on the Privacy Advisory Board website, by the way, you'll note that it lays out a plan for 500 initial smart streetlights. And this makes you think, right? And last meeting, somebody very, very smart brought up a good point about that you don't just put railroad tracks in unless you're going to build something around that. And so there's all these questions going around, and there's the, of course, further use, but you got so many questions from the public and so many questions from our amongst board members that the police, then the city should, of course, address these. So we want to let you know that it's something that is very, very important to think about when discussing anything is not just what is being discussed, but what's not being discussed. And that's exactly what happened 6, 7 years ago when the initial streetlights came out, because it was all about smart energy, improving energy costs. And then after the fact, it was then discovered that this is actually what the day-to-day use is going to be. So please think about those kinds of questions, and please, if you're so incentivized to come out to one of the future listening sessions or next board meeting, and you definitely get that.
We have a question right here.
So when the police do a roll up with technology, they then come to your board?
Yes, but, so if the trust, the surveillance ordinance, which actually is called trust surveillance ordinance, does have some caveats. So anything that is included in a federal task force does not necessarily have to go to the board. So when you hear about things that involve the border, things that might not involve the cities of San Diego specifically, we're only able to address what is presented to us. And as far as I understand, the city and the police are going to, they kind of have to follow this new ordinance in place as best as they can. So yes, new and existing surveillance technology in order to be used.
So you're expecting police will come and present things to you?
That's the idea.
My advice to you, require that they do so under oath. The reason being, police are allowed to lie. And they're allowed to lie whenever they're not under oath. And if they think it furthers their investigative purpose to lie too, they can get away with it. So the only way you can prevent that is.
That's good.
One question I have
I'm
sort
gonna
of
want to do.
as a follow-up to that is, also, so say the PAB makes a recommendation, but the city council just ignores you. Have they talked about what
That's great.
protocol?
Glad you brought that up. So ordinance also lays out the process for that. The interesting part about this is that there's several actions that the board can take. We can approve, we can have notes about our approval, we can do nothing, which at that point, the city can just do response without any kind of feedback. But we can also object, we can also modify the existing proposal. And if, I believe modify is interesting in that case, because it also means that it's a sort of a yes, but here are the things that need to be addressed, and here are the things that you must address as a city. So I think that's something that's very, very important. I think you hear the word board, you think of kind of bureaucratic type of, oh yeah, they're just gonna, whether or not, if the city wants it done, they're gonna do it regardless of what the board says. So it's a very, very important point to make, is that just kind of build with that in mind, that there will be times when it's something that has a lot of support across states. For example, smart streetlights, license plate technology, that's being rolled out across many cities across the country. So one of the things to think about is, okay, are some of these arguments, some of these points specific to San Diego that we can really, really make sure get drawn out? And the answer, I think, to that is, well, we shouldn't probably assume that if it happens elsewhere, it's going to happen here. We should probably just do what we can and have something to hold the city accountable to. And I believe those yes, no, yes, but, or nothing gives this spectrum before of options that previous cities might not have had. And this ordinance was created with what other cities have done in mind. So I just want to keep it, if you read that.
Can I ask you one clarification?
Please.
What the board's recommendation is advisory to council. So at the end of the day, council can do whatever it wants, but I think the point is that before this, this slows the process down. It gives the board an ability to ask really, really difficult questions. It gets kind of on the record, that if the board totally disapproves and the council goes ahead with it, at the end of the day, this is only as effective as the organizing that actually makes life very difficult for electeds. At the end of the day, council is accountable for these technologies. The PAB just makes it harder for them to hide, and it gives us time and spaces to understand, to hear each other.
Very important distinctions.
We have to organize. Because in other cities, these ordinances can become rubber stamping, legitimate surveillance technology. So if we don't organize it, like, the mayor will just appoint whoever he wants for the next round, and, yeah, so thank you for like, because that's what gives us the.
And it's important for you guys as well to keep board and the city in check, making sure that communication happens both ways.
Once the board makes its recommendation, the board will be out of this process, right? They're gonna move on to other technologies, but we're not gonna be done, right? Actually, once the board's work is done, that is when it's all on us at that point. It's all on the community to talk to the council members, to uplift if the board's, decision-making is solid and sound, to uplift that decision and activate as a community to demand or at least request that the city council make the right decision, right? Because the board will be the wind at our back, but it will be us, the community, achieving that final result.
I saw Michael Brackney's hand first, and then Martin. Maybe you can both ask your question, and he doesn't have a lot of time, so we can take.
I have a follow-up question about power dynamics. The mayor can appoint, in fact, does appoint every member of the board, right? With the consent of the council. That's what I heard you say. Does the mayor have the authority to fire anybody from that board at any time he or she likes?
Yes, the answer is that all boards in San Diego serve pleasure.
That's what I thought.
But I would caution that with a little bit of reality, which is it's not common. that you
Right.
See.
I just wanted us to be aware of what the pressures might be.
Yeah.
And a historical aspect of that. Obviously, somebody snookered us back in 2016, you said. Has anything been said to hold those people accountable or to make it clear who did what so that we know what the history is and who was involved in doing that?
And part of that, you may want to share a little bit, a quick history.
Let me just answer it. That administration is basically turned over, who made that call. So let me answer this from a community perspective. Where are the places where we can apply accountability? Because in the strong mayor form of government that we have, the place to apply accountability is probably not the mayor. It's an executive position that isn't particularly responsive to communities, right?
Right.
So at the end of the day, where was the point that the community could have influenced that project and failed to do so? It was and will always be at city council. That they have to approve these things. Now, in that case in 2016, city council approved it, thinking that they didn't really, they would say that they didn't know about the surveillance properties of the system. Okay. So that being said, now we're here because there's not going to be any more, well, gee, we didn't know. We're going to know. And Mike is going to really help us.
I can stay for maybe about 2 more questions.
Okay, cool. I wanted to double check that first.
Does that answer your question? That our place to hold people accountable is at this?
It does, but I still have some concern about the lingering influence of whoever did the original snooker.
Gotcha.
I'd like to know who that was.
What is technology firms? Did this right?
I stop.
The GE is the company behind it.
I have a Twitter thread on it. Absolutely, I very quickly run through. Falcom donated to Falconer's mayor campaign. Falcom and Falconer hold a quiet meeting. Falconer wins. Falcom's CEO's wife joins the GE board of directors. City Attorney Mara Elliott, still in power, discloses she owns GE stock. Elliott signs the contract for the technology. After she skip over that. She then made it, when she signed it, she wasn't supposed to sign it if it was stock in GE. So then she got rid of the law that made it a misdemeanor for her to do what she did. Then, Tamar Elliott contracts to pay GE $30 million on behalf of the city. After they pay that, the GE sells the division to AIP. The terms of the contract negotiated by Mara don't require GE to disclose what AIP intends to do with the data. Police Chief Neslet makes a surprise announcement that, he's using the data. And it all comes out that we had this contract that authorized the data. And the problem is, they could be doing this right this minute. Right this minute, they could be making technology out of, whatever, and they're not coming to you, and they're not asking for it. And, you have Maura Elliott, who was never held accountable for her role in bringing this to it. Right now, AIP sold that data to a third company in Florida, who collects that data at 5 days after it's, used. And during 5 days, police are able to view it. And what are they using with that data? We don't know. There's technology focused on Planned Parenthood. Are they gonna let people know which people are traveling from other states, have abortions, things like that?
Colleen, thank you for the rundown, and I wonder if it's available to the public in general, and particularly does the board know all about this?
Oh, the board does. The
Yes.
public, every time I bring up spy streetlights to anybody in the public, they have no idea what I'm talking about, no idea. And if, my point is, if this technology was intended to prevent crime, we would all know about these cameras. Every camera would be labeled that this is a camera, surveillance camera. If it was intended to prevent crime, it's not. It's not intended to prevent crime, it's intended to catch criminals, and which criminals? Certain criminals, where the cameras are placed, and depending on the police, when they look at it, who they decide to pick out. So this is targeting minorities.
Since we only have Ike for just a few minutes, I think maybe one more question. I saw Martin had one, and then we're gonna let Ike go, but the conversation will continue, and we'll definitely hear again from everyone.
So to follow some of the conversation, how much have you been able to follow the money trail, the responsibility, and it's tied into the infrastructure? Who are the vested interests, and have they donated to city council people the way San Diego Gas and Electric did, et cetera, so that there's that kind of accountability? The second thing I would like to ask is, of the cameras that are installed, how much racial profiling is evident in the way in which they place those, where they place those, and how they've used it?
Sure, I think I'll answer your second one first. We presented in our last meeting, and you can see the presentation again on our website, that at least the information that they gave us. They claim that none of those AI capabilities are going to be available in this installment. However, the technology does have the ability to do AI on the edge, which means on the device. It doesn't have to be done remotely in some sensor. This can happen on the spot. It's not going to be enabled. That does not mean it's never going to happen, of course. So I just want to keep that in mind, that that's not advertised, but that does not mean it's not possible. Second, so the board's role is to essentially be a megaphone and sort of a whipping, like a whip that the public is holding, both of those things at once. So in terms of following the money, I would absolutely love that answer. You can only do so much as an individual. Yeah. Anybody who has that information, anybody who has the deets is more and more welcome to make that front present, get that in front of the board, get that in front of the city, get that in front of the public. Yeah. But that's something that I just wanted to let you know that the board's role is more or less to be independent, but to give that clear conduit, unrestricted conduit line to the city. But, sure.
Have you heard of Stingray?
Yes, I have.
You heard of Shot Spotter? You heard of Pegasus? And you heard of StepNet?
Yes, I have.
Okay, what I'm saying is that in this age, we're going forward with technology. And so if the city have a platform that when more technology down the future comes in, that there is a committee like this, because it's not really a decision, they're gonna make a decision one way or another, especially if they have power and what's gonna work. That decision is under review. And that review is the outcry, because it takes an incident, personal damage, collateral damage, the list goes up, that's the outcry. If everything goes smooth and there is no outcry, it's over. That's my opinion.
No, I certainly, I empathize with that. I am aware of the technologies. I am aware of the things that this tends to not say how they operate, but does the public. These are things that, please, if you are sure the public should know about these in more detail,
Right.
as well as advertising components, these are things that we invite you to bring out in listening sessions, next board meeting.
Right, because it's really the after and how the organizing is, this is our feedback.
Sure.
Because that's what they did with the cameras. With the,
Okay.
I want to thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, thank you so much. Ike, Anyanetu. Really appreciate you taking time to be here with us. And we are going to, we're going to continue the conversation without Ike, and I've got a couple questions for Lilly and Seth, and then we're going to open up and questions that are going to include everyone's answers as well. But first, I'm just curious, how did you guys get into this work? What brought you to where you are now?
Well, actually, maybe I'll try to mix the answer to that with also something I wanted to add about the dialogue we were having about stingrays, Pegasus and all that. I think one of the dangers of focusing on surveillance as a tech thing is that like the surveillance tech is just kind of like a very intense version of the kind of like in-person surveillance that communities have already been dealing with. And so, you know, like Khaled Alexander from Pillars of the Community will talk about how like police were like posted up in cars on every street corner, like taking down names, saying like, oh, this person's in that gang, that person's in that gang, etc. So I think that's important to keep in mind, because I think what the police and the mayor can do is like at a time when people are super angry about housing affordability, and then they see like, you know, social instability on the streets in the form of the people who are being most harmed by these things, then the mayor can say like, oh, but look, like I'm going to give you policing, I'm going to give you security. And so like, I think we actually have to organize in like communities that are like not in this room right now, like in our PTAs, like in our like universities, in our like workplaces, to try to figure out how to get people to understand safety as something that's not going to come from like the police picking people off, like Colleen was saying. So to me, like the surveillance tech ordinance is kind of like a block and an opportunity, but it's actually like an opening to question the whole promise that like in-person surveillance, tech surveillance, any of that after the fact prosecution is going to fix safety in the media. I got into this work from kind of two pathways. One pathway is my family's from Iran, and so when September 11th happened, I was in college. I remember coming home to where I grew up in LA, and my mom was like, "Oh yeah, the police were in here like looking around, and like we didn't know our rights." But I also was like so living in this like deluded like middle class suburban fantasy of like that's not what the police do, that I actually thought my mom was somehow like wrong, like I couldn't integrate that information. And then of course, as you saw how like the war on terror unfolded, it's like my uncle was involved in his mosque, like FBI like called him off of a plane once to like try to question him. Apparently they tried to make him into an informant 3 times. So like I kind of understood that there's this like these like cultural circumstances that legitimate like this intense like you know, looking for scapegoats to serve up to the American people to say like, look, you're safe, we got them. And that scapegoat could be like any of us, although not equally any of us, like for sure. And then the other piece of it was I used to work in the tech industry. So I used to work at Google, like building like search engines and email and all these things. But I noticed that Google, since like as they grew, like they started working to get, you know, more tied up with the US government, because the US government, when people were calling for privacy regulations, if Google could convince congressmen that, you know, the data that they're collecting would be useful for security purposes for law enforcement, then like that Congress would no longer push so hard on privacy. Yeah. So Google started having conferences on child trafficking, weapons trafficking, all these things that would kind of get them ties to the government, get the government invested in their gigantic like consumer surveillance infrastructure. So seeing that like happily be building some stuff, thinking that you're making like a messaging friends. And it's like laying down the same track like data vampirage, that's why I'm doing this work. Sure.
Like, I just got into this in 2017, because, about y'all, if you remember what was going on in 2017, we'd elected a new president, things were just wildly off kilter, and I was looking for ways to help in the community. And, I didn't have deep roots in the community at that point. I didn't have, I wasn't a professor, and I wasn't like Colleen Alexander, who was also in trust, spent a decade deep in the southeast San Diego fighting for, the people and his neighbors there. I didn't have anything like that. What I had was a 20-year career in technology and understanding, I thought, of how these technologies were increasingly, instead of being used to benefit you, they were being turned around. So now we were becoming the subjects of technology, and the people enjoying the benefits of it were the authorities, right? And that, to me, especially in the context of 2017, was highly concerning to me, because how technology, you'll hear the police talk about it all the time. They call it force multiplier. They love that word. They love to say how technology is a force multiplier, right? And I don't know if anybody has taken a look at.
I made it through all of that. I'm not really expecting the mayor's gonna nominate me or appoint me, but I'm gonna make it difficult for him not to.
The CPP needs our help, that it needs community attention. There's, the volunteers that were on that interim board, they were working 80-hour jobs. Like, it's just not possible. So they just started quitting. Right? So at this point, there's not enough of them left. That interim board will be Council President Hilo Rivera has announced that the City Council will soon start the process of appointing people to the next vision of this board. But for now, we're just out of luck. Like, the community has no protection. It's very sad. And that's probably why I didn't come on.
It's not the first they will appoint three this power boards here.
Okay, everyone, so the Mevo has encountered an error, so now we are live streaming straight from the computer into the Zoom room. And hopefully folks, so I'll be just kind of walking around with this guy.
Right, because I haven't decided on it. But what's interesting to me is that in that budget, for the very first time, there is a mention of carrying out the old system, which I gotta tell you, I thought would never happen. Like, if I would have put money down, that those broken lights, for the most part, up there would be there 10 years from now. Like, I call it zombie surveillance, not connected to anything, half not available. You'd have to crawl up there and put your hands on it if you wanted to get anything off of it. The police now have also included a statement, maybe in their documents somewhere, I've seen it now twice, where they've alluded to using some of the budgeted funds to go take down the old system. Sounds great to me. I kind of don't believe it. And there are almost 4,000 devices out there in 4,000, different locations. So it's real hard for me to believe that they're going to do the investment to go tear down all 4,000 devices. But if I'm wrong about that, I will write the mayor an apology myself. I would be glad if I was proven wrong on that. But it does seem like kind of a big stretch.
I wonder if it costed out the electricity bill, because my understanding was that something about the way that the streetlights were wired to the surveillance devices was that you couldn't cut off power to the surveillance device without cutting off the streetlight.
Right.
And they have a big budget item. This is so boring, but to redo a lot of the electrical on the streetlights. So I think that it actually does.
Maybe, yeah. I worry that what they're talking about is removing where they have overlap, right? So they're going to put up 1,000 new cameras in 500 locations. So I'm worried that what they're talking about is as they go out there to put new devices up, if they encounter old devices, that they will take them down. But then going back to zombie surveillance, we're talking about thousands of cameras still out there. But they're not competitive. They're what? They're not competitive. of their debt. I mean, this is part of the policing of San Diego. 3 years ago, these things were supposed to be great. 75% or more of them was debt.
Studies that I found say that, if you have a visible surveillance camera, that, it can act as a deterrent for property crimes, but in terms of violent crimes, there's no deterrent. So if that's what you care about, like violent crimes are often people who have conflict, right? So, they're not looking for a camera to see if they're. So yeah, that's what the stats say, the only stats I found.
And to be a very important point that Lily just made, that's if you want to deter crime, you put a camera.
Like what Colleen was.
These don't look like cameras. I don't know if you guys have seen these boxes. These look like white boxes sitting behind a streetlight.
Right.
The cameras are very, very small. They don't look like cameras, right? So if you want to deter crime, like Lily said, it's been studied a bit. You put up cameras, you point everybody's eyes. These are cameras. You're being watched, right? You don't put up, you don't put up these devices that look nothing like cameras.
Stealth.
Yeah, it's stealth, right? You don't put up stealth cameras if you want to deter crime. That's not how it works.
So
And so I just want to, so everyone knows we're now again completely up here. Ask, I don't know if feel like you've given a complete picture of everything that San Diego is trying to do with AI and surveillance. Is there anything that just background folks should know that you know of on the horizon? Or?
Well, so we've been talking about the surveillance cameras mounted on streetlights. There's another, like, part of what they want to do is not just about video cameras. It's also about automated license plate readers. And so automated license plate readers basically are cameras that look at cars as they go by and then read out the license plate number, and then they can check like if a police has a hot list or something like that. So some of the concerns about like automated license plate readers that people often say is like, if there's a sufficient density of them, you can build a profile of like where you go across the city. Being where we are and knowing what we know about the federal task force exemption, like the automated license plate readers seem to me kind of like an automated checkpoint. It's like that really harrowing, like violating experience you described crossing the border. It's like they're trying to move the border onto the corner across the right.
they are.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah. So this like push, what the $4 million budget is for cameras that have like AI capabilities, but also the most basic capability that they definitely want to enable is automated license plate reading. And the one thing I would also say is like the police are usually saying like, oh, like these cameras are going to help us like catch criminals, quote unquote. And then they kind of get the public really hopeful that somehow that's going to help them be more safe. But the number of the places they put the cameras is nothing like the density of the previous smart streetlight iteration. It was like 3,000 streetlights before. Now it's 500. They're probably going to put in more and ask for more money, but it seems like it's more likely about some kind of checkpoint control rather than like keeping like this, the glowing eye of 1984 everywhere to protect you. Yeah, I don't really trust what.
And that's the derivative. That's always happens as a graduate saying, oh, look it, like this medicine's supposed to cure your diabetes, it's losing weight for you. So then it ends up with being weight loss. So what I'm saying with technology, it starts with this intent, but they're finding out, wait a minute, it's really working with this other area, whatever that area that they're finding on. And that's how they basically market it.
And I want to maybe bring Colleen into the conversation. Yeah, Colleen Cusack here. I've just gotten to hear a little bit about your work from Lilly and Seth. But if you want to introduce yourself and then maybe share what you know about these issues a little, and feel free to share whatever's on your heart.
My name is Colleen Cusack. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I came out here 35 years ago to get away from the Valley Forge winners and to go to law school. And so for 30 years now, I've been a local attorney and fighting against police. So the technology is just one more way that the police are trying to encroach on their own authorities and expand on their own authorities. And I've spent my career in keeping them in their box. The way I explain it to my students is like a video game. So you have your video game characters playing in your TV and your monitor and stuff, and that's fine because they have certain definitions and that's where you expect them to be. If they were to step out of the TV and into real life, we'd have some problems, right? That would be very upsetting. Well, that's the police have the authority we give them under the Constitution. We gave them that authority. And when they act within the bounds of that authority that they're in on a TV monitor, their box, their container. When they step out of that and start acting on their own and for their own purposes, that's when we need to get them back into that box and keep them restrained, keep them acting under their own authorities. They are always going to want to expand on their authority. That's just the nature of their job and the nature, and for us people, we have to be very vigilant in holding that line. So where you see surveillance, I just see one more extension of invasions into my clients' rights. So you mentioned how violated you felt at the border. And the border is the front door of the nation. So when you're at that border, the Constitution doesn't apply yet. It's only after you go through that door that now the Constitution applies to everyone. And so when we're in this and these rights should apply, imagine how terrifying it is to people when they don't, when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. You know, I go to these street encampments and tell my clients, just stay inside your tent. They can't open it. They can't come in. They do anyway. They open it anyway. On tape, and the police officer, well, I needed their driver's license. Well, sorry, you need a warrant. And when I'm around, they don't do as much of this, but they still will do it when I'm not around. They're going to take advantage whenever they can. And it's terrifying for my homeless clients who don't have a lot of agency and don't have a lot of options to stand up to this incredible power. They are being surveilled right now. So imagine if you knew that there was a surveillance program where police were interviewing innocent people and maintaining a database of these innocent people so that they could show, well, we've had 10 contacts with this innocent person, so now they should be arrested. That is what's happening with homeless people right now. They are keeping this, and then when I represent them, so they get charged with these silly things. I've defended my clients for covering themselves with cardboard in the rain, for standing on a sidewalk, for disturbing the trash, just touching something in the trash. That was the crime. Not taking anything out, not putting anything, just touching it. And my client was charged twice in an hour with the same crime. The complaint, the first time he got the ticket, and so the sergeant came on and said, yeah, it's a good ticket. And then the sergeant surveilled him for another 30 minutes so he could issue him again, same ticket. So you have this, it's almost as if the police are using homeless people as pincushions, the way nursing students practice on people's IVs. Go practice on abusing people's rights with the homeless people, because nobody's gonna complain about that. That they'll all cheer for you when you do. So that's what got me involved in helping homeless people, is nobody else was, and they were taking advantage of them because of the fact that they couldn't assert their own constitutional rights. This technology is going to exacerbate the crime of the racial profiling that's happening already in our city. So they have the ability to go look at this footage. They get permission, not of a judge. This should be a judge that grants permission to look at this surveillance. That's what the Fourth Amendment requires, but they have it set up where some non-judge entity that they asked for, who has no training in the law whatsoever, said, yeah, you can look at it now, sure. It's when they look at it, which neighborhoods are they looking at? Why are they looking at it? They certainly were looking at this footage during the protests after George Floyd. They're not looking at this footage in Santee to monitor the white gang activity. If they see the footage, say there's two people committing crimes, but they only go after the minority and not the white person. or they don't even look at the footage that would show crimes in the white area. So, there's a lot of decisions to be made, and right now they have a setup where they can circumvent the Constitution and, judicial review and the magistrate and get to look at this. Under the Constitution, any containers, they need a warrant to open. And essentially, the video footage from the surveillance is in a container that they have to get open in order to look at. And they're not getting warrants. So,
Open it up to, want to invite people who've had a personal story to share a story of their experience with surveillance or any of these issues. And so, yeah, sounds like Sergio says, anyone, so just want to, just raise your hand and I'll be looking around. So you can, just give me a wave and we'll move around.
What you're sharing, I worked 20 years at the sheriff department and I was in charge of property. And so when we give the bag, they were always saying, where's my cell phone? And I would say, well, it's probably with the detective or it's probably with the sheriff, but they forgot it. They just didn't put it in there. Well, I heard this trend. Where's my cell phone? And it finally came out that went to the Supreme Court that they were sucking the data out of the cell phones in order to get a lead in the context for others when they're not even found guilty. And so what I'm trying to say, it took one person to make a formal complaint, and then it went to the judicial due process, and then the Supreme Court says that's unconstitutional. But trust me, for about 5, 6, 10 years, where's my cell phone? And I would have to explain to them that, well, you're gonna have to follow whoever in charge of it. And so that's an example of what you're sharing, because it eventually goes to the due process on the judicial side of unconstitutional.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And then I saw Yusuf. Oh, I thought you had a story. I'll share a story then. This one was kind of an interesting space. So it happened in Long Beach. It was the night of one of the Democratic Party conventions, and at night there was a lot of after parties and people go out bar hopping and whatnot. So I found myself in downtown Long Beach at 2 in the morning when all the bars closed. And if y'all haven't been there, it's an interesting sociological phenomenon, because it just becomes this like chaos. And then there's cops stationed everywhere. There's police everywhere, basically trying to make sure people are deterred from fighting. But inevitably, there's just this raw, wild tension going on. But I've been walking on the street, and I randomly saw these very aggressive dudes walking by and saying racial slurs and just really aggro. And I immediately took my camera out and started filming. And as I walk up, I see the cops handcuffing a young, to be a young Black man. And he looks actually very calm. And I go up to the police and I say, well, why are you guys arresting him? It seems like those guys. And they're like, well, he punched them. And it turns out that those dudes came at him. This guy who was being arrested happened to be a former military, serving in the military. And the police only saw him swing back and in self-defense. I caught this video, and the cops, I don't make it practice whenever I'm able, and whenever I see police detaining someone, if I can, I stop and I film. And it has multiple times resulted in the police letting that person leave, go, because they suddenly are being watched. And so I think I share this in particular. Well, and in that moment, the cops ended up sending some of their people to go find those guys. They did get arrested, which of course, for better or for worse, what's now they're stuck in the carceral system. But they let this gentleman go. He was incredibly grateful to me. Shared the video with them, and another young man I once saw. I had a video, and this one, it was in Los Angeles, and the cops were just questioning him. And after the police finally let him go, because they saw that I was sitting there a little further away, they finally let him go. And he came up, or I said to him, "Hey, do you want the video?" And he said, "Yes, please, because my parole officer keeps asking me, why do I keep getting in trouble? And I don't know." And he's like, I live in Vegas and I just am back visiting my mom. And cops keep accusing me, "Oh, you're back in town, you're part of this gang," and harassing me. So I guess it's also, these are some things that where I'm like, well, moments where video helps, but it's me taking the video and being in control of the video and being able to show something. In that moment, the cops had their vision, they weren't paying any attention to if there was some. So those are some of my concerns. I also have been thinking about undocumented brothers and sisters and wondering what that phenomenon must be like to feel like, wow, okay, I'm about to be target. So anyone else just want to personal experiences they want to share or questions? We're open to questions as well and comments. I think we only had one other sort of film. We're gonna and we'll get into what we do after we give space to really hear from those who haven't been speaking yet. What brought you here tonight, even if you want to share why this topic came to you. And then I also remember we have one person on Zoom who has mentioned something, but we'll go to you, and then I'll also at Blair will. Oh, actually, sorry, Blair's got his hand up. Blair, go ahead and.
All right, thank you.
Let me turn my computer up loud. I think everybody.
Hopefully you can hear me okay. I wanted to quickly offer a thank you. I come from the San Francisco Bay Area. I moved to San Diego, San Jose about last July. And I've been trying to learn how to practice tech accountability ideas since about 2014 when the ACLU tech ordinance came out. And so it's been of interest to me how this stuff can happen and grow. And I'm really hopeful for it to accomplish. I wanted to quickly offer just a real thank you for the words of Lilly, who spoke about it's her feeling that, we may not be in a fully big push for a ton of new technology at this time, but 500 is still a lot of new technology. And I think we can really talk it down to really, really small amounts. I mean, really, 25, 15, 25, 50, small numbers. But it's from that, I also wrote in the chat, I wrote all this down in chat, that the question of Mayor Gloria is wanting to do all the smart streetlight fix-it repairs. And he has a whole contingent of community who wants their streetlights fixed. And for people, they can call up a quick number and say, my streetlight's out, can you come fix it? There's been a big stalling of that, I think, in respecting tech issues. And I think we have to learn how to be adept at talking about what are we going to do about these really small update things? What sort of accountable practices can we have for that? When do we say no? And how do we say no? And what can be allowed and what won't be? And how that all connects. That's my main question. And one other comment that I for all the incredibly good work that we did from 2016 to 2022 on the smart streetlights as an activist community, I really think we have to prepare that there's new questions to be asked about how to talk about what tech is actually in place and how much Ubiqua is really in control of all this tech. And we have to be really honest in those conversations. And if we're more honest, I think that will help them see that they can limit the amount of tech they actually have. They don't need anymore. We already have a good amount and they don't have to keep on adding and adding. But if we use old patterns in how to talk about these things, I'm very fearful that it will limit how we can limit the future of tech, and it'll only add to their fuel that they can do more. So those are my feelings, and I'm flexible in working, and that's how I'm going to work on it personally. I'm very willing to be negotiative about how you guys will have different ways to work, and how we all can work to limit tech in the future. That's my goal. And so thanks for your time, and good luck in our efforts.
And then good comment. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Nancy. Remember, Serge showed up for it. And so I'm involved that way, and I also have ALP already. We're sharing their advice, CDP, others, and so I have ad hoc emergency coalition to deal with that. And in media coverage, police chief said she didn't even realize that the council members, they didn't know. And so we still call ourselves the ad hoc committee because we really thought it would fix. This is terrible, and the council members would say, oh my God, yes it is. And then fixed. Instead, the city dug their heels in, defended the police with no question, and it started like a 3-year so far battle. Similar to what trust has been, but different because the people are different technology. But that has been education, how technology works, how ALPR works, and all the dangers, including tracking. And also how electeds work, that they trust. Please tell me about how the technology works, surveillance, and what it will do, and how it keeps people safe, and then how media can be super duper helpful in like following the money or digging deeper. And so that's kind of how I came into this, and working with Trust has been awesome, and working with Tech Workers Coalition. And yeah, and I really want to encourage any activists to get informed about this, educated, and start looking into all the different ways this can impact every issue you're involved
Any thoughts? Question.
I was thinking about like the 100-mile border zone that where you can repress Fourth Amendment rights, and if the surveillance technologies are different in and out of that area.
I was actually wondering that too. This wasn't, I felt like in 2016 it was like, oh, the airports and the borders. Like in 2016, like every international airport somehow became part of that 100 miles from a border. You have no rights. And so, like, to what extent can we? Yeah.
So what that means is during that area, if you are a federal immigration officer, then you can stop someone without probable cause with only reasonable suspicion. So lesser standard. So you only have to articulate a hunch, but it has to be based on facts. So hunch based on facts that a crime might occur. And some of those hunches that have been okay is the fact that a car in Temecula had dirt on its backside, and dry dirt, and they said it hadn't been raining around there, so it must have been going across the border. 100 miles away, yeah, 50 miles away. So things like that, and I brought that up in my class, and I've had students who are police defended saying, well, yeah, why else would the dirt be there? You can't think of 1,000 other reasons. Yeah, but that's one reason it could be, and so that's all they need for the reasonable suspicion.
I think the ALPR tech that they want to get, actually one of the advertised features is not just detecting license plates, but detecting dirty license plates. And I thought that was really strange. And now I wonder if like that's why.
Well, there's a lot of people who are trying to evade the law, who cover their license plates, and that might be a way to go in and target them. But if you put one of those glass covers over your license so that it'll reflect, so you won't get picked up by the red light camera photo enforcement, you'll have street cops pulling you over just because that's evasive technology and you're trying to hide something. So you probably have a dead body in your trunk. Yeah.
I know about 10 years ago, California didn't do it because of the big uproar with the Hispanic community saying that, but they passed a law in Arizona where the city police, the state police can charge an individual on his or her immigration status. And then what happened, it went to the due process, and then it came back by saying, as long as the immigration, the federal ISAC, I guess, gives a class to the city or to the state on immigration, then they in return are certified to make that decision for the immigration of challenging a person because of their skin, because of their clothes, because of their behavior. Do you remember that?
Bio is doing. And what happens, there's 287G agreements. 287G says that, hey, I can outsource my job to other cities and you cities can help me, but the federal government has to agree to give you that authority. And they yanked that authority back from Joe Arpaio because he was abusing his authority. And so Joe Arpaio, sticking his crawl, says, well, we don't need your authority, we'll do it on our own. And so that's why he went to the governor, got that law to pass, and then it was wrapped up in the courts. And they basically said, no, the federal government has this authority, and if they agree, you can do it, but if they don't agree, you can't. Yeah, the 287Gs are, but not. Yeah.
That I will ask one, and maybe you guys can field around. Well, isn't there some case to be made that surveillance camera footage could come in handy? Perhaps I met a death penalty lawyer recently who suggested that, if footage could get his client off because they could say that was not my client, that was definitely not them, there might be some reason for that. So we could talk about like sort of issues, complicated issues around that, and cool, perfect. And like, what do you say to people who say security? Maybe
The police can only access this footage for 5 days. Most people do not get appointed a public defender until a week later. So that their attorney's not even gonna, that footage is gone for that person.
And there's a good reason why the footage is not kept that long. So in a case like a body cam, where you have a targeted situation, you know that the video is going to be a law enforcement interaction with somebody. The laws on those body cam footages are longer because you kind of know what you're looking at in that case. With mass surveillance, 99.9% of what you're looking at is you going to church, you going to the grocery store, and you going to the doctor, right? It's all harm. It's all harmful surveillance that's happening. It's just collecting up everybody's information. So one thing that we try to do when we are trying to put controls around this is that we say, for mass surveillance, the amount of retention, of data retention needs to be as narrow as possible, right? So in the original streetlight cameras, it was 5 days. They're proposing to expand that now to 15 days, yeah, under the new use policy. So just, I know that's a layer of complexity that I know is often unwelcome. It's dividing up different surveillances and realizing that different surveillance needs to be treated differently. And in the case of mass surveillance, we really need to be thinking about it's the most harmful to the most people, so it needs to have the most constraints. And to Colleen's point, then how good is that highly constrained data source going to be at, at giving off great information for a defendant? That's going to be very difficult. Very rare.
At securing exonerating evidence withheld by the city or the city police.
Well, even if you extend it to 15 days, there's going to be a process to go through, and they could just wait out that process, passing memos back and forth, and then say, oh, it's gone. So they're going to be very selective with this. If this shouldn't be their toy, this shouldn't be in their toy box. This is owned by the city, owned by taxpayers. So the police can go to the judge and ask to see it. That's how it should be set up. And the public defender could also go to that same judge and ask to see that if it was in a toy box that the judge kept instead of that the police are keeping.
I would think also just about police wearing body cams.
Oh, that's another short.
Okay, yeah.
But the body cams are supposed to keep them honest. That's what we're supposed to, right? Over 85% of the crimes that are charged in San Diego are charged with infractions. Not misdemeanors, not felonies. In infraction court, you're entitled to an attorney, but not a court-appointed one. So guess what? Who's going to be the ones that get disadvantaged in that court? It's going to be court people. I mean, the only penalty is a fine. The only people punished are the court. So my homeless clients find themselves in this court most often. And I ask for discovery on my client's behalf, and they refuse to give it to me. They just refuse. So then I have to get motions. I took this all the way up to the court, got appellate decisions. And so now they're still refusing, but the court's granting my motion. So in every single infraction, I have to bring a motion for discovery. I don't have to do that in misdemeanors or felonies. Why is it taking me more hours on a pro bono infraction case just to get the evidence against my client than it would take me to handle a felony from start to finish? So the reason it's doing that is they know I'm doing this pro bono. They know if they waste my time that I'll be able to do fewer cases. And so this is deliberate act to interfere with my own economic enjoyment. I've had to take on a second job. I'm now a K-12 substitute teacher, and that pays my bills. So when I don't have court, I go into the classroom, and I do that about 12 days a month, and then the other days I'm in court. I much prefer the classroom right now. But I had to do that in order to keep representing homeless people for free in this courtroom. The public defender is not allowed to represent them in this courtroom because it's not a felony or a misdemeanor, and they can only do misdemeanor and felonies. Legal aid is not allowed to represent them because it's criminal and not civil. I can't get grant funding for this because it is criminal, and no grant funding will allow direct representation in criminal cases. So I've had to make some decisions in this regard, and I've taken it on myself, but they depend on the charity of private retained attorneys. And unfortunately, most of the private retained attorneys are in it for the money. And they're not public defenders. Public defenders are buried under 500 cases in the office, and they're not noticing anything I'm doing. So it's very lonely. It's very frustrating that not one of my colleagues has stepped up yet to join in. But I'm going to be setting up a assembly line this summer with law students, and we're going to crank these cases out. Incredible experience for law students to have. But it's exhausting that, and you get to follow the money. Follow the money, it's easily followed. You have San Diego Police Officer Association, the richest thing around, handing boatloads of money to city council. We have 9 Democratic city council members that we shouldn't have to protest criminalization. It's because of that money. It's because the Police Officer Association, if they're not just giving the money, they're giving their endorsement. And if you just say, police support me, all the general population goes, oh, please, we support them. I like the police. Police are nice to me because I'm a white person and they've never hurt me before. And so it's very difficult to wrest control of our city back from these big moneyed interests. Not just the Police Officer Association, but also the Builders Association.
See a question over here from Mr. Martin Eder.
Well, first of all,
Comment.
a huge thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being here. And we definitely would like to get you on KNSJ Community Radio. Come by this Saturday right down here on Home Avenue in the Laborers Union Hall, second floor. We'll get you on the air that day. The stories that you have to tell and the importance is really striking. But I want to give you the opportunity, I think, you know, as activists San Diego, what we're really interested, what kind of social justice activism should we all doing in order to mobilize? Because as you all said, you know, it's people power in the end that makes the difference. And give us some, you know, where do we get into the wedge, and how do we apply that activist spirit to create justice?
You all may have all kinds of ideas for what you could do. Like, I know there's people who organize in all kinds of different ways in this room, but one of the things that was very helpful in the early days of the Trust Coalition was just like neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood, people who cared about this, like set up a meeting, set up a town hall to like for people to find out what's going on, learn more about it, hear from other people, share their stories. And then so I think like one of the things that I know some of us like really wish we had, like we need help, like capacity, like going out into places like your church, your whatever, and just like hold those spaces. And if you need help, like you need some, I'm sure like anybody who's spoken here today, you could probably ask them to come and share their story. I'm sure like I would come, you know, to that space. But yeah, we just like y'all have your relationships, but also if people have other ideas, like I think that this needs to be like a network of autonomous organizing also, so that, you know, the police can't control us and they can't control the stories we tell. And frankly, I think like talking to a family of parents who are afraid about a school shooter is going to be a really different conversation about like how you create safety without the promise of surveillance cameras in that community than if you're going in like City Heights and people have really different experiences with like, you know, police on the sidewalk. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that was the interesting, I would say.
Like the immediate need we have is tied into all this is the camping ordinance that's coming up before City Council, because that is an overreach of police power. They will be using surveillance to hold these people accountable, even where they're being placed. So they have 2 safe camping lots that they've set up. They're kettling what they do with protesters. They're kettling homeless into an area, and this area is a stone's throw from the police headquarters. So they're making it easy for police to contain, wrangle them up. So we don't know when that's going to be before City Council. We think it's going to be sometime in June. We're going to need to mobilize on the fly. On Tuesday, we're having an event at City Hall to protest the ordinance from noon to 2 p.m. We'd love a lot of people there. We have 19 tents. Each tent has a different letter painted on it. And so from one side, it spells end criminalization. On the other side, it spells housing, not handcuffs. So the tents themselves are an art installation. And we've taken them to different areas in San Diego to make our point. It takes a lot of work to set up and break down, so we do it about once every 2 months. This time around, we want to make more of a statement, and we want to carry these tents around City Hall. And in order to pull that off, we need 76 people. 19 tents times 4 people, you'll only be holding a corner of an empty tent, it won't be heavy. But we need, and so we don't have enough people, we'll stay stationary, but we'd like to pull it off. We'll also have signups there, we'll collect your number, so that if things with surveillance comes up, we'll certainly be letting you know that we need you to show up for that as well. And so get your name on that mailing list, and we'll put you to use. Other thing I could use your help for, I'll let you know, is I was invited by the Federalist Society to debate the mayor of Coronado. And so that event, I could use some friendly faces in the audience, please. Yes. The topic of that debate is the pro side that Richard Bailey will be arguing is that we need more police to address homelessness. And so when they asked me if I would take the con position, I'm like, well, you're asking me if I'll do the easier, more morally defensible position? Absolutely.
Yes.
So
Do you have a
that's
date on
June
that?
15th.
June 15th.
And I can get more information to you as well through your group, as well as if you sign up on our mailing list. If you come to the event at the Civic Center. Yeah.
All right. So we're at 8 o'clock, so I want to kind of give you guys the opportunity for some closing thoughts. And then unless we have any urgent comments, questions. Okay, and we'll have time, we've got plenty of delicious food things that I bought for you all. So we'll stick around and continue the conversation out there while we eat, snack, and but give you guys time for final thoughts. Yeah. We'll
Film the police always. And 2, stop electing officials who get endorsed and bought off by the POA. Say, no, my vote's not gonna go there. You know, you look at the spending for the chart for police versus everything else, you know, homelessness is like this and police is like this. They can't fix everything. They just can't.
And do you have like a Venmo handle, if you want to say it right now? I feel like anyway people can directly support you financially.
I don't do that. No.
Okay.
Too much
All right.
complications,
No
and it
worries.
wraps me up with like the
Fundraising.
Rudy Giuliani's of the industry.
Got you. All right. Well, thank you for doing the work that you're doing. It's really appreciated. And we're here to support.
Yeah, I guess my final thought is just that the surveillance technology we've been talking about, it's invisible, it's pervasive, and like Colleen said, it's about expanding police authority and promising us all the things that we should be getting through like housing and healthcare. So please get, like, if you can figure out a way to like bring this conversation to other places and then get those people to scare the shit out of their city council electeds. Yeah. That's my request.
And how can people get in touch with Trust?
So I think if anybody's watching this and wants to get more connected to this, in fact, what I would recommend they do is get in touch with Activist San Diego through the channels that Activist San Diego has built, because ASD is going to interact with Trust, and we're going to make sure that anything that we're doing makes its way out through ASD. And it's the last thing I want people to know, just as we talk about how to spread this in the community. A good example, it was mentioned earlier, there's a surveillance company out there called ShotSpotter. They're going to be in the city proposing their technology very soon. But what you all perhaps don't know is that they're already here doing the work. They are meeting in backyards and with neighborhood associations. They are seeding themselves in these small places. They've hired a company here in town, a PR company, to set up meetings at all these little backyard, community groups, all the activists, essentially, right? And what are they doing? They're scaring the wits out of these people, saying, ShotSpotter is going to come in here and save all of you. ShotSpotter is doing the work. Okay, they are in the community selling their product to small groups. All they got to get 10 people in a backyard, they'll be there. They will fly somebody out from the East Coast to do a full hour presentation, multimedia experience to sell their product here. That is what we are facing. That is the competition, and that has to be the model, right? We have to counter that model with more of our own backyard meetings. And I will be there. I will support you. Somebody at Trust will support you. I don't care, you know, where it is in San Diego, we will support you. But we do need your help and your connections and your backyards and your community groups to form these things and then tell us about them, you know, through ASD. So please, you know, feel free to activate and get in touch, and we will back you.
Obviously, money, and they can do, and they're very well organized. They have college graduates and they go out to them. What I'm trying to say is that the reason why I know of these items is because of PBS. PBS is highly informative, and it should be like, you know, a collaboration, because with their library for PBS, Pegasus, and, you know, these issues, I mean, they should be made available for all of us. So this way you take, you know, at least 45 minutes, watch it, and that is a documentary that speaks for itself.
Powerful, but like journalists have been really important to what's been happening the last 3 years here in San Diego. Like Voice of San Diego is quite dogged in pursuing the PD and doing freedom of information requests. KBBS has done reporting, but I think the reason why the backyards are important is because then when somebody's learned about it, then how do we get them, you know, to put pressure on their council member? How do we get them involved in direct action? It's through those relationship networks. And PBS can't do that. They're not going to like broadcast or protest like invitation, you know? So I think there's like both those things. Thank you.
Next door and ring him and talk to people about why those are not the best things in the world, and kind of counter that fear.
I'd love to have a little parade. We go from ring door to ring door and just fill up their video stuff with nonsense, right?
I've got one right across. We actually staring at you.
You like
Okay, everybody, we could talk about this all night. It's just something that's very, very important and very, very engaging. So I want to thank everybody for coming out, and I'd like to make a little summary of what I heard today, which is just some key sort of clips from people. So when Ike was here, he said the video cameras, they have the capability, but they say they're not enabled. And then that leads me to what Lilly said. Lilly said we have to verify the promise that law enforcement says they're not, which we don't believe, right? That they're not enabled. Seth talked about the criminals are the subject. When the criminals are the subject, the public benefits. But when the public is the subject, law enforcement benefits. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Colleen jumped in with law enforcement is they practice violations on the homeless community. And we have to be sure of we're protecting the homeless people and being the voice of our homeless siblings while they're on the street being practiced, violated. And she also says that this system exacerbates racial profiling, and it is an overreach of police power. So I want to thank all of our guests here who did an amazing job, informed us of a lot of things. And thank you all for the exchange with our experts. Everybody here was a wonderful community summit, a community forum. And for everyone online, thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us. And you can look forward to more engaging topics like this. There were plenty of things mentioned here today, and you should try to sign up and come to as many of them as you can. We welcome you all. Thank you.